I was sitting in that cold courtroom, my hands shaking as I watched my daughter Amanda walk through those heavy wooden doors like she owned the place. 10 years, 10 whole years since she walked out on her 7-year-old autistic son. And now, here she was, dressed in an expensive navy suit I knew she couldn't afford, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he charged more per hour than I made in a month. My grandson Oliver sat beside me, his fingers quietly tapping that familiar pattern on his knee. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The same rhythm he'd used since he was little to calm himself. At 17, he was taller than me now, his dark hair neatly combed, wearing the blue button-down shirt we'd picked out together last week, when we thought this was just going to be a simple hearing about his app's legal protections. "Your Honor," Amanda's lawyer began, his voice booming across the small family courtroom. "My client, Amanda Chen, is here today to claim what is rightfully hers as the biological mother of Oliver Chen, the minor who has recently earned substantial income through his software application." I felt my stomach drop. The way he said minor made Oliver sound helpless, like he hadn't built something incredible with his own brilliant mind. Like he hadn't spent 3 years coding late into the night, teaching himself programming languages I couldn't even pronounce. "Ms. Chen has suffered tremendous emotional distress over the years," the lawyer continued, pulling out a thick folder of documents. "She was forced to make the difficult decision to temporarily step away from parenting due to overwhelming circumstances, but she never relinquished her parental rights. Now that her son has achieved financial success, she deserves compensation for her emotional suffering and a significant portion of his earnings as his legal guardian." Temporarily step away. That's what they were calling abandonment now. I glanced at Oliver, expecting to see the signs of an incoming meltdown, the rapid blinking, the hand flapping, the way his breathing would get shallow when he was overwhelmed. Instead, he was perfectly still, watching Amanda with an expression I'd never seen before. It was calculating, almost amused. Amanda stood up when her lawyer gestured to her. She looked different, older, obviously, but there was something else. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup perfect, her nails manicured. This wasn't the exhausted, overwhelmed young mother who used to cry in my kitchen about how hard everything was. This was someone who had clearly been doing just fine without the son she claimed to miss. "Your Honor," Amanda said, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. "I never wanted to leave Oliver. I was young, scared, and dealing with postpartum depression that went undiagnosed for years. I thought he would be better off with my mother temporarily while I got the help I needed." I wanted to scream. Postpartum depression. Oliver was 7 when she left, not 7 months. And she'd never mentioned depression. She'd told me she was tired of dealing with his problems and wanted to live her life. "I've spent every day of the last 10 years thinking about my son," Amanda continued, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I've been in therapy, working on myself, preparing for the day I could be the mother he deserves. When I heard about his success, I was so proud, but also heartbroken that I wasn't there to share in his achievement." Our lawyer, Patricia Hernandez, leaned over and whispered in my ear, her breath warm against my cheek. "Grace, I have to be honest with you. This is worse than I expected. She's claiming she never legally abandoned him, and technically she's right. Without a formal termination of parental rights, she still has legal standing. We might lose this case." The words hit me like a physical blow. Lose? How could we lose? I was the one who held Oliver during his meltdowns. I was the one who learned about sensory processing disorders and special diets and weighted blankets. I was the one who drove him to therapy twice a week for 5 years. I was the one who celebrated when he spoke his first full sentence at age 9, who cheered when he made his first friend at 14, who cried happy tears when his app got its first 1,000 downloads. Amanda's lawyer was still talking, throwing around legal terms like parental rights and financial compensation and emotional damages. He was asking for 60% of Oliver's earnings, plus monthly support payments, plus reimbursement for Amanda's therapy costs over the past decade. I felt dizzy. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the air too thin. This couldn't be happening. Oliver had worked so hard. His app, Spectrum Connect, was helping thousands of kids like him navigate social situations, understand emotions, communicate better with their families. The money wasn't just money. It was validation that his different way of seeing the world had value. That's when Oliver leaned over to me, his voice so quiet only I could hear it. What he whispered made my eyes widen in complete surprise. For the first time since Amanda had walked through our front door 3 weeks ago with her legal papers, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Oliver stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. The courtroom fell silent as this tall, serious teenager prepared to speak. Amanda's confident smirk began to fade as she looked at the son she'd abandoned, really looked at him, for the first time in 10 years. "Your Honor," Oliver said, his voice steady and clear, "I'd like to present some evidence to the court." The day Amanda left started like any other Tuesday. I remember because Oliver always had speech therapy on Tuesdays, and I'd promised to pick him up afterward so Amanda could have a few hours to herself. She'd been asking for more breaks lately, saying she needed space to think, to breathe, to remember who she was before becoming a mother. Oliver was 7 then, still small for his age, with those same serious dark eyes that seemed to see everything but understand so little of the social world around him. He'd been diagnosed with autism just 6 months earlier, after years of Amanda insisting he was just quirky or going through a phase. The meltdowns, the repetitive behaviors, the way he'd cover his ears and rock when the world got too loud. Amanda had explained it all away until his teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, gently suggested we have him evaluated. That morning, Oliver had lined up his toy cars in perfect rows across the living room floor, organizing them by color, then by size, then by the year they were made. He could tell you the manufacturing date of every Hot Wheels car ever produced, but he couldn't tell you why his mother had been crying in the bathroom for 20 minutes. "Mama sad?" he'd asked me when I arrived, pointing toward the closed bathroom door. His speech was still limited then, mostly 2-word phrases and questions that broke my heart with their simplicity. "Mama's just tired, sweetheart," I'd told him, though I knew it was more than that. Amanda had been tired for months, tired of the routine Oliver needed, tired of the stares when he had meltdowns in public, tired of cancelling plans because Oliver couldn't handle changes to his schedule. Tired of being the mother of a child who was different. I should have seen the signs. The way she'd started staying out later when I babysat. The way she'd stopped talking about Oliver's small victories, like the day he finally let the barber cut his hair without screaming, or when he managed to eat something green without gagging. The way she'd begun referring to his autism as his condition, like it was something shameful that needed to be hidden. When I picked Oliver up from therapy that afternoon, Dr. Torres pulled me aside. "He's making real progress, Grace," she'd said, her kind eyes bright with encouragement. "He used 3-word sentences today, and he made eye contact for almost 30 seconds straight. With consistency and support, I think we'll see remarkable growth." Consistency and support. If only Amanda could have heard those words. Oliver was excited on the drive home, stimming happily by flapping his hands and humming a tune only he could hear. Cars, 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 he kept saying, eager to get back to his perfectly arranged fleet in the living room. But when we walked through the front door, the cars were scattered across the floor, kicked aside in someone's hurry. Oliver froze, his happy humming stopping abruptly. His breathing started getting faster, the way it did when his world felt out of control. "Mama!" he called out, his voice small and confused. That's when I saw the note on the kitchen counter, written in Amanda's hurried scrawl on the back of a grocery receipt. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. I thought I could, but I can't. He needs more than I can give him. Please take care of him. I'm sorry." A. My hands shook as I read it twice, 3 times, hoping the words would change. In the living room, Oliver had started rocking back and forth, making a low humming sound that meant he was trying not to have a meltdown. I found Amanda's room empty, her closet cleared out, except for a few old sweaters and the maternity clothes she'd never thrown away. Her jewelry box was gone, her laptop, the emergency cash I'd given her last month, even the framed photo of Oliver as a baby that used to sit on her nightstand. "Where, Mama?" Oliver asked when I came back downstairs. He was still rocking, his cars forgotten around him. How do you explain abandonment to a 7-year-old who already struggles to understand why people do the things they do? How do you tell a child that his mother chose to leave him because loving him felt too hard? "Mama had to go away for a while," I said, sitting down on the floor beside him. "But Grandma's here. Grandma's always going to be here." The meltdown came anyway. Oliver screamed and threw his cars and hit his head with his fists until I managed to wrap him in the weighted blanket Dr. Torres had recommended. I held him while he cried, his small body shaking against mine, and I made a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. "I will never leave you," I whispered into his hair. "Never, never, never." But even as I said it, I felt terrified. I was 62 years old, living on a teacher's pension and social security. I didn't know anything about autism or sensory processing or how to help a child who saw the world so differently. I didn't know how to be a mother again, especially to a child with needs I barely understood. That night, after Oliver finally fell asleep clutching his favorite red car, I sat at my kitchen table and cried. I cried for Oliver, who would wake up tomorrow asking for his mama. I cried for Amanda, who was so lost she thought running away was her only option. And I cried for myself, wondering if love would be enough to fill the enormous hole Amanda had left behind. I had no idea that this moment of complete devastation would be the beginning of the most rewarding 10 years of my life. The first year was the hardest. Oliver asked for his mama every single day for 8 months straight. "Where Mama go?" became his constant refrain, and each time he said it, I felt like I was failing him all over again. I'd learned that children with autism need honest, concrete answers, so I couldn't just say she'd be back soon. But how do you explain to a 7-year-old that his mother chose to leave? Dr. Torres became our lifeline. Twice a week, I'd drive Oliver to her small office with the soft lighting and the basket of fidget toys. She taught me about sensory overload, about how the world felt too bright, too loud, too much for Oliver's nervous system. She showed me how his rocking wasn't something to stop, but something to support. It was his way of regulating himself in a chaotic world. "Think of his brain like a radio that picks up every station at once," she explained during one of our sessions. "He's not trying to be difficult. He's trying to make sense of all the signals." I started seeing Oliver differently then. His need to line up his cars wasn't obsessive. It was his way of creating order when everything else felt unpredictable. His meltdowns weren't tantrums. They were his nervous system's way of saying it couldn't handle any more input. His repetitive questions weren't annoying. They were his way of seeking comfort in a world that rarely made sense to him. Money was tight those first few years. I'd retired from teaching the year before Amanda left, planning to enjoy my golden years with some travel and gardening. Instead, I found myself taking substitute teaching jobs whenever I could, grateful for the flexible schedule that let me be there for Oliver's therapy appointments and school meetings. The school meetings were brutal. Oliver's teachers meant well, but they didn't understand him. They wanted him to sit still, make eye contact, participate in group activities that overwhelmed his senses. I became his advocate, learning terms like IEP and sensory breaks and accommodations. I fought for him to have a quiet space to retreat to when the classroom got too loud. I insisted on written instructions instead of verbal ones because Oliver processed information differently. But slowly, beautifully, we found our rhythm. I learned that Oliver thrived on routine, so we created one together. Breakfast at 7:15. Always the same bowl, the same spoon, the same placement on the table. School pickup at 3:30, followed by 30 minutes of what Oliver called car time, where he could line up his collection and decompress from the day. Dinner at 6, bath at 7:30, bedtime story at 8 soon. Within that structure, Oliver began to bloom. His speech improved dramatically once he felt safe and understood. By age 9, he was speaking in full sentences, asking complex questions about how things worked. His curiosity was endless. He wanted to know why traffic lights changed colors, how elevators knew which floor to stop at, why some people could look at each other's faces while talking when it felt so uncomfortable for him. That's when I first noticed his gift with patterns and systems. Oliver could look at our old computer, a clunky desktop I'd bought years earlier, and somehow understand how it worked. He'd watch me struggle with simple tasks and quietly show me shortcuts I never knew existed. When he was 10, he taught himself to type by watching YouTube videos, his fingers flying across the keyboard with a precision that amazed me. "Grandma, computers make sense," he told me one evening as I watched him navigate through programs I'd never seen before. "They do what you tell them to do. They don't change the rules." I understood what he meant. People were unpredictable, their emotions shifting like weather. But computers followed logic, patterns, clear instructions. For Oliver, they were a refuge from the confusing world of human interaction. By age 12, Oliver had discovered coding. He'd found free tutorials online and spent hours learning programming languages with names I couldn't pronounce. I'd find him at the computer late at night, his face lit by the screen's glow, completely absorbed in creating something I couldn't begin to understand. "What are you making?" I'd ask, and he'd try to explain in his patient way how he was building a program to help him remember his daily tasks, or creating a game where the rules never changed unexpectedly. His first real breakthrough came when he was 14. He'd been struggling with social situations at school, not understanding when people were joking, missing sarcasm, feeling lost in group conversations. So he created a simple app for himself, a digital guide that helped him recognize facial expressions and understand common social phrases. "Look, Grandma," he said, showing me his phone screen. "If someone says whatever and rolls their eyes, it means they're annoyed, and I should probably stop talking about trains." I watched him use his app throughout high school, saw how it gave him confidence to navigate friendships and classroom discussions. Other kids started asking about it, and Oliver began sharing it with classmates who had similar struggles. Dr. Torres was amazed by his progress. "Grace, You've given him something invaluable, she told me during one of our final sessions. You've shown him that being different isn't something to fix, it's something to understand and work with. As Oliver's 17th birthday approached, he came to me with an idea that would change everything. Grandma, I want to make my app available to everyone. There are kids like me all over the world who need help understanding social situations. I think I could really help them. I looked at my grandson, tall now, confident, brilliant, and felt a pride so fierce it took my breath away. Oliver's app launched on a quiet Thursday morning in March. He'd been working on it for over a year, refining the interface, adding features, testing it with other teens from his autism support group. He called it Spectrum Connect, and watching him prepare for the launch was like watching a master craftsman put the finishing touches on a masterpiece. Grandma, I'm nervous, he admitted the night before, his fingers doing that familiar 1, 2, 3 tapping pattern on his desk. What if nobody downloads it? What if it doesn't help anyone? I sat on his bed, surrounded by the organized chaos of his room. Coding books stacked in perfect piles, his computer set up with 3 monitors that made me dizzy just looking at them, and his childhood cars still lined up on a shelf, a reminder of how far we'd come. Oliver, you've already helped yourself, I told him. You've helped your friends at school. This app came from your heart, from your own experience. That's what makes it special. The first week was slow. A few dozen downloads, mostly from people in our local autism community who knew Oliver personally. But then something magical happened. A parent in California posted about the app on a Facebook group for autism families. Then a therapist in Texas shared it with her colleagues. Then a teenager in Canada made a TikTok video showing how the app helped him understand when his sister was being sarcastic versus when she was genuinely upset. By the end of the second week, Spectrum Connect had been downloaded over 1,000 times. By the end of the month, it was featured in Autism Speaks newsletter. By summer, major therapy centers were recommending it to their clients. I watched Oliver handle his sudden success with the same methodical approach he brought to everything else. He created spreadsheets tracking user feedback, organized feature requests by priority, and responded personally to every email from parents and users. His bedroom became mission control, with charts on the wall showing download statistics and user demographics. "Look at this, Grandma," he said one evening, showing me his laptop screen filled with colourful graphs. "We have users in 43 countries now. This teenager in Australia said the app helped her make her first friend. A dad in Germany said his son finally understood why people shake hands when they meet." The money started coming in slowly at first. Oliver had priced the app at $4.99, with additional feature packs available for purchase. But as word spread and downloads multiplied, the revenue grew exponentially. By October, Oliver was earning more in a month than I'd made in a year of substitute teaching. "We need to talk about taxes and business licenses," I told him, feeling completely out of my depth. "And maybe setting up a proper bank account." Oliver, with his typical thoroughness, had already researched everything. He'd found a local accountant who specialized in small businesses, learned about LLC formation, and even started setting aside money for quarterly tax payments. At 17, he was more financially responsible than most adults I knew. The real breakthrough came when TechCrunch wrote an article about Spectrum Connect, calling it a game-changing tool for autism support. Suddenly, Oliver's phone was ringing constantly with interview requests, partnership offers, and investment opportunities. Major tech companies wanted to buy the app outright. Venture capitalists offered millions for a stake in his future projects. "I don't want to sell it," Oliver told me firmly. This isn't about money, Grandma. It's about helping people like me. Instead, he chose to partner with established autism organizations, donating 30% of his profits to research and support programs. He hired a small team of developers to help expand the app's features, always insisting that any new team member either be on the autism spectrum themselves or have extensive experience working with autistic individuals. By December, Spectrum Connect had generated 4.2 million in revenue. Oliver was featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine as Teen Innovator of the Year. Local news stations wanted to interview him. The mayor wanted to give him a key to the city. Through it all, Oliver remained remarkably grounded. He still did his homework at the kitchen table every night. He still lined up his cars when he was stressed. He still asked me to make his favorite grilled cheese sandwiches cut diagonally, never horizontally. Grandma, none of this would have happened without you, he told me one evening as we watched the sunset from our back porch. You believed in me when nobody else did. You helped me understand that being different was okay. I felt tears prick my eyes. You did this all yourself, sweetheart. I just loved you. That was enough, he said simply. That was everything. But our peaceful life was about to be shattered. The local news coverage had been picked up by national outlets. Oliver's story, the autistic teenager who built a $1 million app, was everywhere. And somewhere out there, Amanda was watching. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when I noticed a black sedan parked across the street from our house. The same car was there Wednesday and Thursday. On Friday, my phone started ringing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize, people asking questions about Oliver's family, his background, his legal guardianship status. Then, on a cold Saturday morning in January, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Amanda standing on my porch, looking polished and confident in a way I'd never seen before. Behind her stood a man in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. "Hello, Mum," Amanda said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I think it's time we talked about my son." Oliver stood up in that courtroom with a calmness that reminded me why I'd never doubted his brilliance, even when the rest of the world couldn't see it. He reached into the messenger bag he'd insisted on bringing, pulling out a tablet and a small projector that he set up with the efficiency of someone who'd planned this moment for weeks. "Your Honor," Oliver said, his voice steady and clear. "My grandmother told me that in court, the truth matters most. So I'd like to show you the truth." Amanda's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. "I'll allow it. This young man has a right to speak about his own life." The first image that appeared on the courtroom wall was a timeline, color-coded and meticulously organized. "This is a digital record of my life from age 7 to 17, Oliver explained. "I've been working on it since I learned my mother might try to claim my money." I watched Amanda's face go pale as Oliver clicked to the next slide. It showed school records, therapy appointments, medical visits, all with my name listed as guardian, emergency contact, and responsible party. Not once did Amanda's name appear after October 15th, 2014, the day she left. "My mother says she left because of postpartum depression," Oliver continued, his tone matter-of-fact. "But I was 7 years old when she abandoned me. Postpartum depression occurs after childbirth, not 7 years later." Amanda's lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear, but Oliver wasn't finished. "I also have documentation of my mother's activities during the 10 years she claims she was getting help." The next slide showed social media screenshots, Amanda at parties, on vacation, in relationships, living what looked like a carefree, single life. These posts are from her public Instagram account. She never mentions having a son. She never mentions autism awareness. She never mentions missing anyone. I felt my heart racing as Oliver clicked through more evidence. Bank records showing I'd paid for all his therapy, medical care, and special needs equipment. School forms where Amanda had signed away her rights to make educational decisions. Even a recording, and I had no idea how he'd gotten this, of Amanda telling a friend last year that she was finally free from all that autism drama. "Your Honour," Oliver said, "my mother didn't leave temporarily due to mental health issues. She left permanently because she didn't want an autistic son. The only reason she's here now is because she found out about my financial success." Amanda shot to her feet. "That's not true. I love my son. I've always loved him." Oliver looked at her directly for the first time since she'd walked into our lives 3 weeks ago. "If you loved me, you would have learned my name for my app. You would know that I donate 30% of my profits to autism research. You would know that I still line up my cars when I'm stressed, or that I can't eat foods that touch each other on my plate." Amanda's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "You would know," Oliver continued, "that I have a girlfriend now named Rebecca, who's also autistic, and that we're planning to attend the same college next year to study computer science together. You would know that I still see Dr. Torres once a month, not because I need fixing, but because she helps me navigate a world that wasn't built for people like me." The judge was leaning forward now, clearly invested in Oliver's presentation. "Most importantly," Oliver said, "you would know that my grandmother Grace Chen is not just my legal guardian. She's my family. She's the person who taught me that being different isn't something to be ashamed of. She's the person who celebrated when I spoke my first full sentence at age 9, who drove me to therapy twice a week for 5 years, who learned about autism so she could help me understand myself." Oliver clicked to his final slide, which showed a simple graph. "This chart shows my developmental progress from age 7 to 17. Every milestone, every achievement, every breakthrough happened after my mother left. Not despite her absence, but because of the love and stability my grandmother provided." Amanda was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration at seeing her plan fall apart. "Your Honour," Oliver concluded, "my mother has no legal or moral claim to money I earned through my own work. She didn't contribute to my success. She nearly prevented it by abandoning me when I needed her most. I'm asking the court to dismiss her case and to grant my grandmother full legal recognition as my parent." The judge didn't even need to deliberate. "Ms. Chen," she said, addressing Amanda, "your case is not only dismissed, but I'm ordering you to pay court costs and legal fees for both parties. Your son's presentation has made it clear that your claims are without merit." Amanda's lawyer was already packing his briefcase, clearly wanting to distance himself from the disaster this case had become. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm granting Oliver's request for formal adoption proceedings. Mrs. Grace Chen, you've clearly been this young man's parent in every way that matters." As we walked out of that courtroom, Oliver took my hand, something he rarely did because of his sensory sensitivities. "Thank you, Grandma," he said quietly, "for everything." I squeezed his hand gently. "Thank you for showing me that love really is enough." Amanda tried to approach us in the parking lot, but Oliver simply said, "Goodbye, Amanda. I hope you find what you're really looking for." 6 months later, Oliver's adoption was finalized. He's now officially Oliver Chen, my son in the eyes of the law and in every way that matters. His app continues to help thousands of people worldwide, and he's started a non-profit foundation to support autism research and family resources. Sometimes I think about that scared, overwhelmed woman who left her 7-year-old son because she couldn't handle his differences. I feel sorry for her because she missed watching an extraordinary young man grow into someone who's changing the world, one line of code at a time. But mostly, I feel grateful. Grateful that Oliver's differences led him to create something beautiful. Grateful that love really was enough. And grateful that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into.